ਸਤਨਾਮ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ। ਮੂਕ ਉਚਰੈ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਖਟ, ਪਿੰਗ ਗਿਰਨ ਚੜ ਜਾਏ। ਅੰਧ ਲਖੈ ਬਦਰੋ ਸੁਨੈ, ਜੋ ਕਾਲ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਕਰਾਏ। ਗੋਬਿੰਦੇ ਮੁਕੰਦੇ ਉਦਾਰੇ ਅਪਾਰੇ, ਹਰਿਯੰ ਕਰਿਯੰ ਨਿਰਨਾਮੇ ਅਕਾਮੇ। ਗੋਬਿੰਦੇ ਮੁਕੰਦੇ ਉਦਾਰੇ ਅਪਾਰੇ, ਹਰਿਯੰ ਕਰਿਯੰ ਨਿਰਨਾਮੇ ਅਕਾਮੇ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। Beinti to the Sangat, could you please turn the mic off and the video off? We will do the introduction later on after the class, as we have commenced the class. So, Beinti Parawan, mic off, please. Hanji. So, previously, Maharaj was explaining about the importance of Sangat. So the Sikh who is curious to know the Atam Gyan, he wants to know how to conquer this mind. So he does beinti to the Guru that Maharaj, this is the avastha of my mind, and how can I conquer it? Because I have no Gyan how to even conquer it. This mind is running around in all the directions. So what Guru does is, Guru gives Gyan to the Sikh that this is, you have to go to the Sadh Sangat. You have to keep your mind in Gurbani. The most Uttam Sangat is of Gurbani, of Naam. So here Guru explains further about the importance of the Sadh Sangat and how there is so much Sukh in the Sadh Sangat. So there is a Sangat of Gurbani, and those who have practiced Gurbani, they become the Gurbani Roop itself. And if we do Sangat of those, we become their Roop as well. And as Gurbani is the most Uttam Sangat, so what happens is, Maharaj says, Jagat Mohafasi, like the mind is attached to this moh. There is attachment everywhere. There is attachment to the body, the attachment to the thoughts, attachment to family, friends. And this is an attachment that is ajar, which never ends. It's like that noose that's hanging around the neck. And there is no way to break this noose. So what happens when one does satsangat, the sangat of Gurbani? That sahaj mukta ho jaye. One attains mukti in a very sahaj avastha. So sahaj, let's understand the word sahaj. Sahaj means effortlessly, whereas there is no effort required. It happens so naturally. So how to understand this? Let's say if we go into a pool of lake, what happens when we enter the water? Without any effort, the body is going to get drenched in water. Now, was there any effort that was required for the body to get wet? No, because the very nature of water is to drench. So what happens when we go in Sadh Sangat? So when we do Abhyas of Gurbani, when we goes to those Mahapurukhs or where there is Sangat sitting, in that effortless state, one knows the secret of how to become Mukt. So Maharaj says, Kam Den Ar Kalpatra. So these are known as, there is this cow, like gau, that is known that all the sukha, all the desires get fulfilled in this. If someone has any desires, based on that, all the sukh gets fulfilled in here. But what happens in satsanga? All the desires that's going to get fulfilled through that, it gets fulfilled within the sangat of Gurbani. So rather than doing all other different methods, in Sadh Sangat, this can be achieved. Maharaj says, Now there is the philosopher's stone. So what philosopher's stone is, it's known that this stone has the capacity to turn metal into gold. So if it comes in contact with anything, it transforms it into the gold. But Maharaj says there is a huge difference between that philosopher's stone and Gurbani and those Mahapurukhs. What happens is, because the philosopher's stone, it only converts from metal to the gold. But what Gurbani does is, the asar, the effect of Gurbani on one of these Mahapurukhs are in such a way that they not only transfer you closer to the gold, Gurbani transforms the man into its own rupa. So that's what there is a huge difference between even that and when we do Sangat of Gurbani. So Sangat ji, there are 2-3 ways of doing Sadh Sangat. The most uttam, as Maharaj has explained, even in Gurbani, the upama, the benefits of doing Sadh Sangat, even in Sukhmani Sadh. So when we do Sangat of Gurbani, that's one Sangat. When there are Pagat Jan who are sitting, they are doing Pagati, that's another form of Sangat. That's Sangat as well too. And the third form of Sangat is the Atam Sangat. Because when we do the Sangat of Gurbani, physically go towards the Sangat, when we read Gurbani, we do abhyas of it. And through the Sangat, physical Sangat, when we get the Gyan of Atma, the consciousness that is ever present, when we get the Gyan of that, that becomes the Sangat of the mind. So Maharaj says that's how you become that. Hanji. So now next Maharaj says there are ways of doing yag. So if any one of you have come across these words, doing yag and havan, so there are a couple of types of yag that we do. One is that we do at home. That's called Agni Hotar. So when only you are doing at home, that's a type of Agni Hotar. And then there is yag. And what is this yag? When there are more than 2 people or 1 or 2 people doing the yag. So what happens in yag is, in that fire, we pour different ingredients like ghee, all these different kyo, all these oil, all these sandalwood. What's happening with this yag is it's purifying the air. So what happens so there is a science behind it. When we do this, it evaporates to the air. And what happens then? It forms into the droplets, and then it changes into the rain. And again, it goes into the fields where then we eat that fruit or eat that crops, vegetables, and all that. So, in a way, that is a cycle that has been formed. And these yag, when someone does it, is considered that it gives really uttam like fal of result, right? So, but what happens in Sadh Sangat? Even if when you're walking towards the Sadh Sangat, the same fal that you will experience from that. And how is that happening? Because when you're walking towards Gurbani, when you're walking towards the Sadh Sangat, your mind is constantly thinking about the reason why you're going towards that. The most important reason why we are going is because the mind is suffering. So mind wants to find peace. And when we go towards the Sangat, we constantly are reminding ourselves that this is what I'm going to go in the Sangat. I'm going to do abhyas there. I'm going to read Gurbani and understand mind. So this is the benefit that Sangat has as even for that yag. So next Guruji says, there are like daya, compassion, and these are all different taram. Jap. Jap means to sit next to lake of water and do mantra jap or sit at home and to recite mantra. Tap is to sort of give yourself to do physically, do a bit of in a way not torturing, but to do a little bit of these physical things, so that such as fasting, so that to conquer the mind. Sanjam is to have control over the senses, and dan is to do charity. So all these are forms of doing, these are form of taram that one does. Now even this, the sukh of this is available through satsangat. And if we see that there are so many ways to do it, when we go in the sangat, we do nam abhyas. What happens when we are doing nam abhyas? The ekagrata, the stillness of the mind comes. And when the mind becomes still, that's when we start getting the gyan of Atma through Gurbani. Then we do abhyas, we apply Gurbani in life. Rather than doing all these one by one, when we go in Sangat, we hear the bachan of Sangat, we hear Gurbani, we hear Kathas. And what's happening is we are doing all of that at the same time. So in a way, it's a time saving too, because these days everything is going at a fast pace. So rather than doing it all these different individually, this can be done in the satsanga. Tirath. Now, as most of you might be aware of, there is Mahakumbh going on in India. Now, this, as Uttam that is, the question we need to ask ourselves is, we are away from India, or we are in India but not able to go there. Does it mean we are not able to get that sukh of doing Ishnan in Ganga? Now that's a question. It means those who are going to Ganga, they are getting pavitra, right? Their mind is becoming pure. But what about the rest of the world? How are they going to get pure then? Do they have to go to the Ganga? Here, that's why Maharaj says that even that is available in the Sangat of Gurbani, where there are Pagat Jan doing Nam Abhyas, doing praises, talking about the Paramatma. This is available right here within the body itself. Maharaj in Gurbani says, Antargat Tirath Malnao, that there is a Tirath going inside yourself as well. By all means, if you get a chance, you can definitely go to Ganga. There is no, issue with that. But just to think that I'm going to get purity of the mind by taking a physical bath, that's not going to happen. And why is that? Because physically we can wash ourselves, but what about the mind? The mind is still in Duvida. The mind is still in thinking about there is one you, one me, one Paramatma, one friend, one enemy, one person I don't like, one person I really like. So mind is still entangled in these. So what happens in satsangat is this duality, this doubt of mind gets removed. So this is the fall, what happens when we go to the sangat. Next, Mara explains that the sukh when we do. Now there is Brahmaji, there are followers, or we worship Brahmaji, Vishnuji, Shivji separately. Now it takes time, because there is also still one Shivji, one Brahma, one Vishnu. So we have identified them as to be separate. Now, yes, there can be sukh in there too. What's happening when we are worshipping Shivji, Brahmaji? It's the stillness of the mind that's happening there. When the Bhagat of Shivji is so much in love with Shivji that his mind becomes still, and then he forgets about himself. So that's how the stillness is happening. But because there is still, if he doesn't see Shivji everywhere, he's going to think that that is only Shivji, one roop of Shivji, the rest is something else. But what Gurmat says is, Sab Gobind hai, Gobind bin nahi koi. Everything is that. And without that Akal Purakh, so Akal means that which is beyond time. So without that Akal Purakh, that consciousness that has taken all the forms, there is nothing else but that. So when we go to Sangat, again in a very sahaj, effortless way, that like we discussed before, there is no the very nature of what when you go into the lake or water like lake, the effortlessly you're gonna get drenched. That's what happens in Sangat of Gurbani too. Haji. So the ekagrata of the mind comes. Next, now there are Veds, different like char Mahaveds, there are Sham Ved, Atharvan Ved, all these different like four there are Veds. And what happens when someone is reading these? And how can one get the gyan of all the Veds in satsanga? So let's take an example that you have read a book and someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm really curious about this. Could you explain? Like, I don't want to read the book. I don't have time, right? So you can ask the person to explain that book in about few minutes. And what that person is going to do is explain you exactly the essence of the book, right? Which means you don't have to read all that yourself. What the Mahapurukhs have done is when you go to the Sangat, what the Mahapurukhs have done is they have already got the Gyan of the Tattva Gyan of all the Ved. So when we go towards Mahapurukh and when we ask them questions, they can give the Gyan within few minutes. Now, as we all know, this day might last for maybe 80 years, 100 tops, who knows, right? But it means we don't have time to read all the Veds. We don't have time to read all the Granths in the world. So what we can do is we can utilize, take the benefit of the Sangat, those who have already read, those who have removed their home in them and they have become Akal Rupa itself. They can share that wisdom within few minutes. You just gotta approach them in Nimarta, and they will share all that with you. So this is the very important. Kin ek mein. It's like within a second they will answer your question as per. Hanji. So now there is known as the Sumer and the Kailash mountains. So these are known as where Shivji resides. So these are huge mountains. It's often looked upon as a very holy place too. But Maharaj says, what about the plants? So obviously these mountains are so high up, they are huge. There is no vegetation growing up there. So these mountains are not able to give that fragrance, that beauty to those plants. But what satsanga does is that it's like that sandalwood that transforms that kushbu of itself, of the Atam Gyan, anyone who comes close to them. Hanji. So Maharaj in Gurbani says as well, Paras parsiye paras hoye jyoti jyot samaye. So Maharaj says like that Paras who is going to transform the mind to the Gurmat. And within that awareness, it's going to transfer the same, it's going to give the same exact gyan to yourself, and the mind is going to become that roop itself. The mind is already that roop, but the mind has forgotten, right? That's why it's Maharaj says that it's going to become like that immediately in that satsangat. Hanji. Now, Mukta Dwar. So the the door of, we call it liberation. It's a bit tricky word. Liberation means as if something is going to open up or some kind of door is going to open up. But the truth is there is liberation in knowing who you are. the liberation of knowing what Gurbani is saying. Man tu jot saroop hai, apna mool pashan. There is liberation itself. The instant, the very second the mind recognizes who it is mukt. So what happens? Maharaj says there are 4 gatekeepers. And because the Nirakar, the Akal Purakh it has no mal on it, no impurity. So in order to know that Nirakar, in order to be that Nirakar, the impurity of mind has to be removed. So there are 4 gatekeepers. One is Sambirti. Hanji. So what is Sambirti? It means to see everyone as a Kalpurak, to hear as a Kalpurak. When you're speaking, it's a Kalpurak speaking. Now, this does not happen without Atam Gyan. Now, because we don't have Atam Gyan, how are we going to practice this? That's why we practice. Even Maharaj in Painti Akhar Bani says, Sad Chor Tab Brahm Pashanu. What we do is, as students, we learn to recognize, we do abhyas in such a way. When we hang out with our family, when we hang out with our friends, when we hang out with Sangat, everyone, we say, tu hi. In your mind, you're doing abhyas of that. And what's happening when we are doing this? It's like a sculpture. What a sculpture does is, when making statues, he's making the statue in such a way using different tools. He's sort of like carving in such a way to form a statue. That's what Gurmat, Gurbani, Sadh Sangat is doing. It's doing that carving of the mind. It's using different tools, and these tools are like tu hi, that everywhere I see, it is you. Tu karta tu hua, mujhme raha na hu. So this is the abhyas that needs to be done in order to reach Samvirti, so that the Atam Darshan can happen. Hanji. Next is Santokh. Now, Maharaj, Santokh is, it's not like not doing anything. It's doing in a way that wherever you are, whatever food you get, naturally, you're just content with it. Now, again, this is about practice. So wherever you are, by all means, do what you have to do. But in that very moment, within yourself, you're doing abhyas of that I am, wherever I am, Maharaj has kept me. I am willing to stay there. Maharaj, hukam rizai chalana. This is what it means to walk in that flow of life. And the Santokh naturally comes there. Wherever you are, whatever situation is happening, you are within yourself content in that. And then Vichar. Now, there is no magic formula. There is no magic pill that we're gonna take this pill and suddenly the Brahm Gyan is going to happen. Only when we practice this in life, that's when it happens. So Vichar is very important too. Vichar means to read Gurbani like we are reading these Granth, and then to within your intellect to do Vichar of that. When you're sitting with Sangat, to do Vichar with Sangat as well of what we have read. And most importantly, to become that Vichar. See now that Vichar has to become in the action too. The action, what we are reading, has to be matched by the action. Right? So that's how we practice this as well. Maharaj says this is like what happens. This is what even all the Mahapurukhs, all the Vidwan Jan says, that this is how one can, this is the most uttam way of doing, of mukti, of liberation, of knowing who you are. Hanji. So Maharaj says there are so many ways. Now there are thousands of different ways. Some say to do yoga, some say to sit in one posture and do this, some says to open the chakras, like so many things going on. That is considered as mukti. But Satsangat is considered to be the most uttam of all this. As we stated, there are so many different ways, but most important is Satsangat, because only in Satsangat we can do the Vichar of that. Anji. Now there are other Taram as well. In worldly way, it says that Ahe Kama Sarupa. Yeah, Anji. So when we think about going to the Sangat, what's happening when we're going to the Sangat? Naturally, either we already have some kind of skill in us, and when we're going to the Sangat, Maharaj says all the ichha, all the desires get fulfilled in there. Now, there are two prakars of desires that get fulfilled. One that is literally visible, that you can see. For instance, let's say there is someone who has some skill in Sangat, then they get the recognition. You will see that this person has that, they get sarope, they get that respect from the Sangat. So that is the visible respect or the phal, the result that of going to the Sangat they are getting. Now there is another phal that's happening, and that phal is not visible, but it's still happening there. That is the phal of Atam Gyan. But that, in order to have that phal, one needs to do the satsangat without any expectations, any desire. So when we go to the sangat, we should go with this understanding that I'm only going there for my own benefit. There is a benefit, and that benefit is that the mal of the mind is going to get removed. I'm going to do Nishkam Seva. There is a subtle benefit there. That's why the Gyan is there. We are reading Brahm Vidya because we know there is a benefit. But that is considered as in a good way benefit, right? So when we go to the Sangat, when we do Nishkam Seva, we don't expect whatever happens. If someone does your Nindya, you are practicing Guru's wisdom. Because Guru said, Ustad and Nindya same, like look at Ustad and treat Nindya as same. So in Sadh Sangat, if anything happens, we use that lens of Gurmat to apply it, and then slowly and slowly with practice, Maharaj gives that Gyan in Sangat. Haji. So there are other, like let's say, Sadh Sangat Simrat. Shri Mukha, Shri Mukha Kahyo. Yeah. So even Krishna Maharaj in Bhagavad Gita, all the Ved, all the Simritiyan, they say that the Sadh Sangat is the most Uttam as well. And this is the Upadesh of Gurbani as well. Like in Sukhmani Sahib, Maharaj does Pankti of benefits of Sadh Sangat. What happens when one does Sadh Sangat? It's like Jaisi Sangat, Taisi Rangat. In simple words, we say you become who you hang out with. So it's similar like that. If you hang out with Gurbani, if you hang out with Advaita Drishti, with that Gyan, with that Bhakti. So what happens in Sadh Sangat? We notice that there are Bhagat Jan who are doing the Nam Abhyas, and they are trying to apply it, they are trying to change their lifestyle according to that. So when we look at that, we notice that even we can do that, even we want to, there is an ichha there to be like that as well. So in Sadh Sangat, when we observe this, the mind starts getting more attracted towards that. and the mind starts doing more abhyas of the same. The mind starts walking on the bhajan of Guru. So in that way, now because in Sadh Sangat, Maharaj says all the duvida is removed. And now Akal Purkh is Nirgun, Sargun, and Suna Samad, Maharaj says, right? So what happens is through the Shabad. Now, how can we cannot see Nirgun because it's without form. What happens in Sadh Sangat? Those Mahapurkhs who have become one with that Nirgun, they have realized that Nirgun Sarup and they have become lean in that through their Shabad, by defining, by explaining. If you sit with them and with pure intention. Now, this is important, not with the intention that someone can recognize me, right? Because then it's again, I'm going to get in, then it's not going to, more and more impurity is going to get covered on the mind because there is still home left, that there is still vadiyai that we want. When we go in Sangat and we in Nimarta humbly bow down to the Guru and says, Guru Maharaj, I give everything to you. I don't know anything. I'm literally a fool. I give everything to you. Tan man tan sab saump Gur ko. Now within yourself you surrender to the Guru. And the Guru says, okay, if you want to walk on this path, here I'm going to give you Sangat. Here I'm going to explain you things in a very simpler way. I'm going to introduce you to those people who are walking on the same path and who can explain you a little bit better how to do it. So what these Mahapurkhs who have known Paramatma, who are Paramatma Roop themselves, they give the paid of Paramatma in words. It is only through words that happen. That's why Shabad is the Guru. Without Shabad, we cannot know the Nirgun. So in Sargun, first of all, it is important to go to do Sargun Upashana, to do Sangat with pure intention. So Maharaj Kripa, here Guru Sahib explains about this Uttamta, this praise of Sadh Sangat. So Maharaj, we will take Vishram. This is the end of the second Adhyay. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.